Hello, and welcome to Tech Latest from Nikkei Asia, where we bring you the freshest updates from the technology sector in Asia. I'm your host, Akito Tanaka from Nikkei Asia's Tokyo headquarters, and Lauly Li, a Nikkei Asia tech correspondent based in Taipei, will join me for this week's episode. We'll discuss China's dominance in the Asian green transition, as well as other stories that we recommend to our readers. Welcome to this week's episode, Lauly. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So, in Nikkei Asia's weekly Tech Asia feature story, you wrote about the growing presence of Chinese tech giants in Asia's green transition efforts. Now, who are these companies and what kind of technologies and products do they provide?
Yes, in this week's feature, my colleague Annie and I introduced the dominance of Chinese suppliers in the global solar energy industry and how they plays a role in helping Asian economies like Malaysia to achieve their green transition goals. In the past decade, China has boasted a majority of the world's top players in the solar industry, such as polysilicon suppliers LONGi Green Energy Technology, Tongwei, and solar module makers like GCL and Jinko Solar. And on top of that, leading global inverter makers, which are critical in converting the solar energy from direct current power to alternating current electricity, are all from China, such as Huawei, Sungrow Power, and Jinlong Technologies. And these are just some of the examples. But China actually has its own leading players in almost each of the segments in the solar supply chain.
And what is driving the growth of renewable energy in Asia or in Southeast Asia?
Um, Pressure to go adopt renewables is definitely growing, particularly in emerging Asian economies, hoping to attract investments from foreign tech giants. Because companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft all have joined the RE100 initiative, which commits to using 100% renewable energy. Meanwhile, Asian countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and India all have committed carbon neutrality by between 2050 to 2070. However, these countries still heavily rely on fossil fuels, which put their ambitions to reach net zeros and attract more tech investments at risk. And that's the major driving force to accelerate the adoption for renewable energy in Asia. And solar energy, compared with other renewable sources like offshore wind, can be deployed in less than 2 years, which make it an attractive option for companies or local governments hoping to rapidly shift to renewable energy.
I see. So the companies like Google and Microsoft, they're building huge data centers in the region, and the nation or the region have to feed them with the renewable energy.
Yes, that's right.
And most important thing about your article, how much influence do Chinese tech companies have in these core renewable energy markets in Asia?
Right. Today, China has a 90% market share or more in the key segments of the supply chain, from polysilicon at upstream end to solar modules at the downstream end, according to Industrial Technology Research Institute of Taiwan. And according to IEA, by 2030, China still expected to maintain more than 80% of global production capacity for all photovoltaic manufacturing segments, despite attempts by the US and India to enforce local supply requirements. And then the agency estimates that manufacturing PV modules in the US and India currently cost 2 to 3 times more than in China. And that gap is set to remain in place for the foreseeable future.
I see. So that's a huge number in market share.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And in the meantime, the United States has enforced tariffs and other trade barriers on Chinese solar products. Do you think this will affect Chinese dominance in these technologies?
I don't think so. It's a little bit too late. I mean, tariffs or other trade barriers will not stop China's dominance in the solar sector. I mean, back in the early 2000s, Japanese and Taiwanese companies such as Sharp, Motec, or New Solar Power, they were the leading players in the solar industry. But they gradually lost their competitive edge as China's massive economic scale and government subsidies allow emerging players to produce solar panels more cheaply. And after 2010, China basically controls significant shares in the solar supply chain. And they have the vast resources to keep up pursuing the latest technology to secure their leading position in the industry. And plus, the US tariffs against Chinese solar products are not like worldwide, which means that Chinese can still produce products in countries that have not yet been affected by Washington's punitive tariffs. And so they can sell products to non US markets as well.
I see. Are there any other Nikkei Asia tech stories you want to recommend to our readers this week?
Sure. We also have a lovely interview story about Taiwan's Minister of Science and Technology, Wu Chengwen, of which he told Nikkei Asia that Taiwan plans to spend at least $1 billion US dollars annually in the next couple of years on artificial intelligence, especially on the supercomputing capability from the current roughly 20 petaflops to 480 petaflops. The move is to secure Taiwan's leading position in the global tech supply chain, and from the perspective of the so-called AI sovereignty, which refers to the ability of an economy to develop and control the advanced AI technology.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauly. Thank you for joining this week's episode.
Thanks for having me.
That's all for this week's episode. You can read Lauly's reporting along with other stories about Asia's tech industry on Nikkei Asia's website, asia.nikkei.com. Before we sign off, I would like to mention an upcoming Nikkei event. Please join us on November 28th for our latest webinar on the global chip industry. This time, the webinar will be joined by Chris Miller, the best-selling author of Chip War, and also joined by Yeo Han-koo, a former trade minister of South Korea, with our own tech correspondent Cheng Ting-Fang. You can register for the event at www.global-nikkei.com/chipwar. Thanks again for listening. Check back in next time for more updates on the tech trends that matter.